Awesome. Thank you very much, Professor Baranek. Hi, and welcome to our presentation about our grant project to build a rain garden in New London's own Riverside Park. Today, we're going to talk and give you guys some information about our community partner, our project, and the grant that will make our project possible. We're really excited, and we thank you for sticking it out with us to the last presentation here. So we're going to start off with some introduction. My name is Richard Gilman. I am in the class of 2022.
I'm Joanna Rucker, and I'm class of 2021.
MT. My name is MT, class of 2022.
My name is Zach McChrystal. I'm in the class of 2022.
I am Matt Chitari. I'm also in the class of 2022.
My name's Emily Sanitas, and I'm in the class of 2021.
I'm Alex Bezier, and I'm in the class of 2022.
So our community partner was the Riverside Park Conservancy. And for this project, we worked closely with Ronna Steller, who is the treasurer, Diane Hansen, who is the director, and Catherine Strother, who is a secretary. The Conservancy is a nonprofit in New London, and they have fought for and continue to advocate for the Riverside Park. They were established in December of 2011, and their main mission is to manage, enhance, and restore the park for current and future generations. Riverside Park is an 18-acre open space arising from the Thames River and is extremely close proximity to the Winthrop Elementary School. It was created in 1893 and was an extremely popular spot for New Londoners. When the construction of I-95 occurred, it began to get isolated and neglected. Some citizens of New London continue to visit the park, while the majority somewhat forgot it existed. 10 years ago, there was a big debate in New London on if the city should sell half the park to the Coast Guard Academy, who would use it for future expansion and develop it for just under $3 million. Some thought that this was not a big deal since the park was not in great condition and had been neglected, and it would also give the city a good sum of money. Others fought for the park and knew its potential value. The city vote on the future of Riverside Park came down to a 19-vote margin in favor of not selling the park. Once they were successful in not selling the park, the Conservancy was formed. The group has hosted several cleanups and various other events at the park. They have also been given several grants to improve different aspects of the park. One current project they have undertaken is to rebuild and renovate the restrooms at the park. They received a grant from the Community Foundation and the New London Water Authority Foundation to repair the building, which was closed for over a decade and is now open seasonally for the public. On top of that, they have received grants in the past to restore the native ecosystem by removing invasive species, to build a butterfly garden, to build a rain garden, and to create picnic tables to disperse among the park. They hold yearly festivals, which are funded by grants, and the festival is called Down by the Riverside, where they try to get as much of the community to the park. They host various activities such as live music and several other small activities for the children, with the goal in mind to make New Londoners see the beauty of the park and all that it is capable of. It is extremely important for the Conservancy to get members of the community to the park because they think it is only fair for people to vote on the park if they have been to the park. They realize just how close the park was to being sold just 10 years ago, and they want all of New London to see the value in the park just as they do and have seen for the past decades.
In our first meeting with the Riverside Park Conservancy, they explained some projects they're currently working on and projects they've done in the past. After considering the needs of the park and the community, we proposed a plan for the project that we think made the most sense. The project that we're proposing in our grant application is to build a rain garden at Riverside Park using native plants. The playscape at the park was built in memory of Emily Parker, who lost her life in the Sandy Hook shooting. It was built on a concrete slab and is next to a hill. Because of the landscape of the park, stormwater falls on the roads and the playground before running down the hill into the Thames River. I included a picture of this space on the east side of the park where the plan is to build a system to catch stormwater before it runs down to the river. A stormwater expert told the Riverside Park Conservancy about these coconut fiber logs, which are pictured on the right, that could be used to trace an outline by going along a ridge that's built on a slope. Eventually, the soil will accumulate to form a smooth outline, and the roots of the plants will stabilize the berm, and it becomes part of the landscape. These logs, which are forming the ridge, can also be used to help divert water to the side, where they can construct a rain garden in a place where it's a bit flatter and there's more space. The size of the rain garden is variable. The stormwater expert told them that a larger garden would be better, but we decided that it's fine if we start small and the project is done in multiple phases. We're estimating that the project will cost approximately $2,000. For a previous rain garden the current conservancy had, a landscape architect came from Perennial Harmony and gave them an estimate for the costs of labor, design, materials, and plants. This estimate was approximately $2,300, and so because this new garden will maybe be smaller, we're thinking that it'll be around $2,000.
So I'm going to be talking specifically about rain gardens, what they are, their importance, construction, as well as what should be on them. So a rain garden is a shallow depression that is planted with various plants that are deep rooted. This includes grasses, flowers, and shrubs. The plants are normally native to the region for the reasons I'll mention later on. A rain garden collects stormwater from driveways, walkways, roofs, or streets. They allow water to sink into the ground, thus filtering impurities in the water. They're important because when it rains, solid surfaces like streets and the other ones I mentioned above do not allow water to soak into the ground. This can result in water pollution issues. So rain gardens serve as a solution for that because they collect runoff and filter it into the soil, thus removing the pollutants. Rain gardens help prevent polluted water from flowing directly into the rivers, lakes, and other wetlands. Depending on the type of plants, rain gardens, depending on the type of plants in the garden, they can serve as a food source or a habitat for birds or butterflies as well as other wildlife in the area. So as you can see from the slides, pictures, rain gardens come in all kinds of shapes and sizes, and they depend on the soil, on the solid surface that is being designed for. And the typical rain garden ranges from 100 to 300 square feet. The depth varies from 4 to 10 inches, and the foundation consists of washed rock, gravel bed, a soil mixture which can be about 50 to 60% sand, 30% compost, and then the other 20 to 30% topsoil. And an overflow structure can be constructed as well if needed. The gardens are able to handle the runoff from a solid surface that is about 3 times its size. And it is really important to have as many native plants as you could possibly have because they adapt to the soil conditions and as well as the local climate in their native land. They're known for requiring very little care, and they're easier to maintain once they're grown. And the native plants normally have deep root systems, which are essential for preventing soil erosion as well as efficient filtration. Numerous native plants are known to grow roots annually, which provides more aeration and water pathways as well.
So to talk about our funding source, we are applying for a grant from the New England Grassroots Environment Fund, an organization dedicated to providing small local groups with funding to create environmentally sustainable projects. Among other grant programs, the organization offers 2 main grants, seed grants and grow grants. The grow grant program, our ultimate choice for the grant, is tailored towards groups that have previous experience implementing a project in their community. Grow grants provide auxiliary support towards deepening and further developing a common vision while lowering barriers to participation. These grants interpret the word environment very broadly and provide funding for a wide range of projects. The Grow grants have 2 deadlines, the 3rd Tuesday in March and September. Funding decisions are typically made at the end of May and early December, and funding is received once the grant agreement paperwork is all signed. The sizes range from $1,000 to $4,000. And they specify that groups must meet the following criteria to be considered for the GROW grant, which are: the group is performing local grassroots work in Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, or Vermont. The group is volunteer driven and/or has no more than two full-time paid staff, and the group has an annual operating budget of under $100,000. Once received, the grants are assigned to two voluntary grant readers who provide scores for 6 different categories based on a scoring rubric. Based on the scores, the grant readers will either assign recommend fund or not recommend fund to the application. The grant making committee will then ultimately make the decision whether to fund the project or not. And after receiving a grant, a report will be due either when all the funds are expended or 1 year from the date of the grant agreement letter.
So I'll be talking about whether our partner, the Riverside Park Conservancy, is equipped for this rain garden, which they are. So they've had a rain garden in the past. They have experience with building a rain garden and having one in their park. So they're not knowledgeable about the subject of that. And they've also worked with the New England Grassroots Environment Fund. They actually Rana recommended the New England Grassroots to us as a source of funding because they've worked with them in the past and they've been successful with their grant. So we have applied through them, and we are in the process of filling out our grant application, although it's not due till March of 2021. So they're also equipped because unfortunately their first rain garden was not long term. It actually unfortunately died due to snow being piled on top of it. So this one will be built so that they have another rain garden at the bottom of the playground, which Joanna showed. And in the picture in the top right, if you look, that's a view from the playscape down to the Thames River. And you can see that it's a pretty steep slope. So the storm water from when it rains will flow from those impermeable surfaces, and they won't stick anywhere, and they'll unfortunately flow right down into the Thames River, which is not good for the river to have stormwater flowing directly into it. So having that space directly below the playground of a rain garden will be very helpful for them. And this will not only help with the park having a rain garden, it will help with New London as a whole, and it will help with the abatement of stormwater flowing into the Thames River, and it'll help collect stormwater off of the playscape.
Awesome. So I'm going to be talking about the environmental impact of our project and why it's important that projects like ours and our project should receive funding. So water pollution is obviously a big problem, and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency estimates that 70% of all water pollution is caused by stormwater runoff. So in our world today, and especially in urban environments like New London, there's a lot of impermeable surfaces. And an impermeable surface is a surface where the water does not soak in, but rather runs over the top and then eventually into a body of water, in our case, the Thames River. So those surfaces can include roofs and streets and parking lots and basketball courts and playscapes. So all of the waste and pollutants on top of those surfaces are then picked up by rainwater and eventually make their way into bodies of water. So some of the contaminants are not limited to, but some might be dirt, fertilizer, chemicals, oil, garbage, bacteria, and excess nutrients. The stormwater can have an effect on the wildlife and the environment in a few different ways. The first more obvious way is that these pollutants are toxic to the wildlife and vegetation along the coast of the water. And then another less obvious impact would be the disruption of the natural water flow. So the stormwater runoff can cause lots of damage to the the fragile habitats of water dependent life species. And finally, the last way it can affect the ecosystem is, and this is a not so obvious one, is that it can carry too many nutrients to an area, and then this can cause algal blooms and overpopulation of a certain fish species. So a rain garden is a really great way to counteract these problems, and because it's all natural and it filters all this water by vegetation, and it mimics the natural hydrologic processes like percolation through the soil, plant uptake, and transpiration. Also, it is helpful for growing native plants like MT mentioned, and also in previous presentations you've heard today. And rain gardens are effective in removing 90% of nutrients and chemicals and up to 80% of sediment from stormwater runoff. And rain gardens can soak up 30% more than a conventional lawn, which is what's in place right now at Riverside Park. So if I could direct your attention to some of these figures in the top right, you can see the process of picking up pollutants and then ending up in a river there. And the two images on the left show, the top shows contaminants on the street. I'm sure everyone's seen something like this. It's everywhere. And then also on the bottom left is a flood showing up, which is also very common and also a problem. Not something you want in your park either. And then finally, in the bottom right is a satellite image of Riverside Park, and you can see all of the roads around it, and a basketball court and the playscape. And these are things that can collect a lot of water.
All right, so in addition to impacting the environment, the new rain garden will also positively impact the community of New London as a whole. Like as previously shown, that area right next to the playscape, that downward slope area is mostly just made up of mud, but now instead it'll be made up of a nice, beautiful garden. The garden will become one of the many reasons to visit the park, along with the opportunities to recreational activities like they mentioned before, like basketball, there's picnic tables, and there's also just the opportunity to be with nature. The Conservancy is excited to have volunteers take part in the creation of this garden. Allowing members of the community to take part will allow them to feel like a part of them is like a part of the park when they create it, and that they can create it to, or they attributed to the park's beauty. The hope is that this garden will also increase visitation to the park, as the Conservancy believes that if more people visited, they would understand why it's important to keep this place healthy and only touched when need be. As talked about before, the history, a large part of why we think that many people were in favor of keeping it is because a lot of the community has never actually been to the park. And due to the close proximity between the Winthrop School and the park, the students are frequent visitors. So the rain garden would provide students with an educational experience and maybe introduce them to something new. The importance of having community members learn about the environment at such a young age cannot be understated. And we also plan to have a sign by the rain garden, like you see in the bottom right, which would explain what it does and how we went about creating it. As you can see, it's just some pictures of the things that are inside of it. So if people wanted to make one themselves, they could easily just go about looking at the sign and taking some ideas for themselves. And a rain garden is only one of the many things that can be done to make a difference in your community environmentally. And in addition to bringing New London community closer together, this project will also raise environmental awareness. And for these reasons, we believe that this project is an ideal candidate for the grant we are pursuing.
So where do we stand now? We answered the questions in the application that we as a group were able to complete. So because the Conservancy has already worked with the Grassroots Fund in the past, there's already a profile established, and some of the information is already filled out, which is really helpful for us. And then questions describing the Conservancy and the plan for the project and the impact to the environment and the community were questions that we were able to answer. But there was at least one question that we couldn't really answer, an example being, what did the Conservancy spend in the last calendar year? So just like some of the financials that we're not really sure of, we're just going to send the answers that we were able to complete to the Conservancy, and then they'll be able to edit it, add to it, and finalize the budget if they need to before submitting the application when it's open between mid-January and late March. And finally, we just want to say thank you to the Riverside Park Conservancy, specifically Rana, Diane, and Kathy, for being willing to participate and help us out with everything. After learning about the Conservancy and researching this project, we've become invested in the future of the park and the Conservancy, and so we're really wishing the best for you guys. And of course, thank you to Professor Brannick and everyone, all of you who just listened to us present.
Excellent. Well, great job, everyone. Let's give them a round of applause for wonderful work. Last but not least, final presentation. Good job. Good job. I think before I open it up for questions and Q&A, I just want to say, like, that was an excellent job to this group. And also, like, I really commend, once we are back on campus, everyone to come out and check out a Riverside Park. It's, I think, the nearest park, or maybe second nearest park in New London to the campus. You could easily walk from campus to see it, and it's maybe there'll be a rain garden there by the time you get back, but definitely check it out. Now we'll open it up for Q&As. If you want to instead submit your questions via the feedback form, I'll post that as well, but I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Q&A. You guys did such a great job. The questions are slow to come. You guys explained everything. I was really curious about the educational aspect. One thing that stuck out to me at the end, I think it was Alex was talking, and he mentioned the sign that gave information about it. Can you speak a little bit more about that? Do you know other rain gardens or projects that have that, or how would you go about implementing that?
Yeah, I don't have anything about like other ones that we've seen, but I know like earlier today, none of some of the other groups, like there's like the QR code and stuff like that was like brought up about like possible things as to like help people understand it. But just because like it is such close proximity to the Winthrop School, we thought it'd be like a really good idea to just have like a sign for people that may not know that it's just there all of a sudden, like what actually it's doing and what service is actually serving.
Additionally, there is a sign in another section of the park that the Conservancy was telling us about, and they actually think that the sign could be improved upon. So like they were saying that they could, like, comparing it to the other sign and like thinking of ideas and ways to improve it and make a better sign.
Yeah, one of the first things when we were talking to Rana and Diane, they mentioned that the Winthrop School was so close in proximity, and that's one of the ways that they can help get the park to increase in popularity and educational aspects. So one of the ways we wanted to incorporate our grant was having the Winthrop School and the schools nearby be able to learn from the park, and that will increase education aspects of the park and increase popularity of it. So that's one of the ways.
I didn't know if you guys saw, but Garrett made a comment in the chat, and he writes, it seems like stormwater runoff is a problem for almost all of our partners, and that he's really glad that Riverside Park Conservancy is using a natural way to tackle this issue. So just making sure everyone saw that. All right, well, I don't want to belabor the part. We've been here for many hours. So I want to give another round of applause to this group. And I also want to thank our partners, our friends over in Riverside Conservancy, Rana and other people. Thank you so much for your contributions.